What you're about to see, or to be more correct, not to see, will infuriate you. It's the face of a brave woman who suffered terrible sexual abuse when she was 15 years old. The perpetrator was her 58-year-old maths teacher. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, what's come since has added to the victim's torment. A crazy Australian law means even if she wants it, her identity can never be revealed. Effectively, it silences this courageous survivor. But the creep who ruined her life is able to talk, and has been, spreading lies by painting himself as the real victim. Now Hollywood and the high-profile leaders of the Me Too movement have stepped in to demand we let her speak. In all of the beauty that is Tasmania, there is one thing we can't show you. The face of this beautiful young woman who wants you to know who she is. She's the victim of an insidious crime and a shameful justice system that has silenced her forever. You're sitting here today, no face, no name.
The fact that I can't take control of my own story, that's frustrating. And it's frustrating to think of all the victims who can't speak up.
Jane Doe is a rape survivor who we can't show you because of an outdated and outrageous law that exists in Tasmania. That law makes it a crime to ever identify a victim of sexual assault, even if they wish to be. If we broadcast her face or tell you her name, we could be jailed.
It adds to that feeling of, like, oh, I have to be ashamed of my story, of my past, which shouldn't be the case.
What's even more outrageous, her attacker, Nicholas Bester, can speak publicly, and he has. The convicted child sex offender is now arrogantly claiming he is the real victim here.
Allison Langdon from 60 Minutes. I had a few questions about the schoolgirl you sexually abused.
About the what?
The schoolgirl you sexually abused. Are you trying to rewrite history?
I'm not rewriting
You
history
say
at
you
all.
got involved with her.
Get out of my way, thank you.
Does that seem fair or just to you?
No.
Her perpetrator has a voice,
Of
and he
course.
is using it to spread lies.
Yeah. So it's not surprising to me.
Me too.
Until now, Hollywood had never heard of Hobart. But Jane Doe's story has reached the ears of those behind Me Too, a global movement to stamp out sexual harassment. They're now determined to help change the law in faraway Tasmania.
Let her speak.
Launching a new campaign,
Let her speak.
hashtag Let Her Speak.
Let her speak.
What are you asking for? What do you want?
Let me speak. Let us speak.
This sickening tale of abuse began in 2010. Jane Doe was a student at the prestigious private girls' school, St Michael's Collegiate in Hobart. She had just turned 15. Nicholas Bester was her 58-year-old maths teacher. She was troubled, anorexic, from a broken home, and looking for a father figure. Bester exploited her vulnerability.
He saw my isolation, he saw my alienation. I mean, he was a man who was giving me undivided attention, and you know, that's not something that I really had until him.
Within months, their interaction had escalated into full-blown sexual abuse. Bester repeatedly raped Jane Doe at school, in his office, in a hotel room, even in a church. She says he was a sadistic monster.
He took a memory that I shared with him of how I was abused as a child by an older child. I was locked in a closet, and Bester recreated that. He locked me in a closet and told me to take off my clothes. You know, that's not romantic. That's cruel.
You were the victim of a pedophile.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't see complete and utter evil in that man. I felt it and I saw it. Yeah. And it haunts me still to this day.
After 6 months of abuse, Jane Doe bravely went to the police, and Nicholas Bester was found guilty and jailed for 2 years. But this is where the law first let our victim down. The wording of the crime here in Tasmania is maintaining a sexual relationship with a young person. No mention of persistent sexual abuse, statutory rape or grooming. The implication was this was a consensual love affair.
In reality, it was a much more sinister, much more insidious case of him grooming me. You can't call what he did an affair.
Well, if you look at some of the headlines at the time, teacher admits to affair with student. She wanted sex, Tasmanian teacher told parents. I mean, if you saw that, what would you think if you read that?
That's appalling. No, it fills me with rage. It fills me with rage that that can be happening now, today. You imagine this from, I don't know, the 1950s or even the 1850s, you know. It's appalling, and I think the power of voices, the power of being visible is something we shouldn't underestimate.
When author and model Tara Moss spoke publicly about her sexual assault, other women bravely came forward with their stories of abuse. She knows the power that comes from giving victims a voice and is insulted that this absurd law gags survivors for life.
They're like a blank space. They're someone that people get to speak about, but not to, not with. You know, that
It's almost dehumanising in a sense.
It's absolutely dehumanising, and there's no way to address this under a blanket of silence. Silence comes hand in hand with injustice.
After Nicholas Bester was released from jail, he enrolled at the University of Tasmania. And to the anger of many, the convicted child sex offender was allowed to live on campus with other students. Attempting to win public sympathy, he brazenly took part in an interview, portraying himself as the victim. It was posted online for everyone to see, including Jane Doe, who was traumatised all over again.
Today I want to introduce you to a so-called sex offender to show you these stories are often much more complex than we assume.
She calls him a so-called sex offender.
Yeah, I think the wording is convicted pedophile. That's the reality.
The interview was
When he was a
conducted
science
by
teacher
sex
at a
therapist
Tasmanian
Bettina
private school.
Arndt at the end of last year. She constantly makes excuses for Bester's criminal acts, focusing on what he has lost.
Everything. Tell me about the cost for you.
Oh, I lost everything. I lost my home. I'd been married for 37 years. I lost my marriage. I lost my children. I lost my job. I lost my status in the community.
This isn't the only time the convicted child sex offender has commented publicly. Back in 2015, after serving his initial jail time, he bragged in a Facebook chat, "The majority of men in Australia envy me. I was 59, she was 15. It was awesome." For that, he was sentenced to another 4 months in prison.
And then you did something else pretty stupid. I can imagine how easily this happens.
But look, it was late one night. I'd had a skin full of wine.
She sort of just laughs it off. You know, like, oh, I could see how this would happen.
Boy, how do you feel watching this?
It's aggravating and frustrating, knowing that he's able to sort of say whatever he likes.
Over the years, I've talked to many male teachers about sexually provocative behaviour from female students. Sensible teachers, of course, run a mile from these girls, but the teachers are still really vulnerable.
If you didn't know your story, how do you think most people walk away from watching this? What do they walk away thinking?
They might walk away feeling sympathetic towards him, that I was the predator, that I preyed upon him. It's so far from the truth.
Coming up, Jane Doe takes her fight to Hollywood.
I feel for Jane Doe. I am Jane Doe.
The Me Too stars demanding change
Thank you for being brave.
Are you trying to rewrite history?
and confronting a predator.
What about the real victim?
That's next on 60 Minutes. Steve Fisher was once John Doe, a child sex abuse victim of the Anglican Church in Tasmania. In 2003, he testified in court against his attacker,
now and forever.
Father Garth Hawkins, who was a serial pedophile. Hawkins was found guilty and jailed.
But then a strange thing happened. I was told by the Department of Public Prosecutions that when he is sentenced, that's it. You're not allowed to talk or be identified as one of his victims.
Just like Jane Doe, who desperately wants to tell her own horrific tale of abuse at the hands of her teacher, Nicholas Bester, Steve Fisher was gagged by Tasmanian law.
I was looking forward to walking out of that courtroom and telling everybody what I thought of the sentence.
Did you feel you had that right?
I absolutely believed I had the right to do that.
In every state and territory, it is illegal to identify a victim of sexual assault without their consent. And so it should be, to protect them. But here in Tasmania, and also in the Northern Territory, the law goes a step further. It was written in such a way that survivors can never be identified. So rather than protect them, it criminalises their right to ever tell their story.
To have that cut off, that was taking all the power that I'd finally got back. It was taking it completely away. And I was devastated, absolutely devastated.
Steve Fisher eventually won the right to tell his story, but only by taking the unprecedented step of fighting it through the courts. It cost tens of thousands of dollars and caused unimaginable stress. Steve has joined the campaign to give Jane Doe a voice, as he believes the law must be changed. We've seen firsthand the power of brave victims like yourself coming forward. We would never have had a Royal Commission. We would never have seen a national apology if we had not put faces to these crimes.
Yes. People should not be re-traumatised for wanting to do something that is in the public interest. And that's the bottom line here. Jane Doe, as we have to call her, she wants to speak out because she wants to warn other people.
Now 23, Jane Doe has made a new life for herself in Los Angeles, far away from tiny Hobart.
It's just a feeling of wanting to start afresh and not be weighed down by all those memories.
What was your reaction when she first opened up to you?
Oh, just a deep sense of sadness but respect and admiration.
One of Jane Doe's best friends in Hollywood is Camilla Cleese, a well-known comedian.
It's hard, like in the world of spoons, I am like a ladle.
Whose father just happens to be of Monty Python fame.
It's like you're a fictional character, I think, if they don't have a name and a face and like...
Right, and we don't need to give them any more chances.
No.
While Jane Doe doesn't have a voice, she has plenty of powerful friends who do and are willing to use them.
The Me Too movement has become a huge thing, and imagine, I mean, that couldn't have happened if people couldn't identify themselves, you know? I'm trying to imagine what it would look like, but it's certainly
It wouldn't exist.
Yeah, I guess it really couldn't.
I feel for Jane Doe. I am Jane Doe.
Television actress Alyssa Milano has been a central figure of Me Too.
We're in this together.
It was an innocent tweet from her back in October last year as the Harvey Weinstein scandal broke that ignited the movement.
And one Sunday night, I got into bed with my daughter, and I looked at her, and I had been dealing with being triggered from my own assaults in my past, and I just started bawling my eyes out and thought to myself, please, we have to figure something out. I don't want her to live this life. I don't want her to be part of this kind of culture that treats women as a second-class citizen. How can we fix this?
So she wrote, if you've been sexually harassed or assaulted, write Me Too.
Okay, so within 24 hours, 12 million people on Facebook had used the term Me Too. Within 3 days, it was used in 85 different languages in 85 different countries. To this day, right now, it's been used almost 20 million times, just on Twitter alone. Now, the way I think of this is if we were admitting Me Too to a illness, it would be considered an epidemic. Why is this not being considered a health crisis?
Alyssa is joining the fight for law reform in Tasmania and plans to share the hashtag #LetHerSpeak with her 3.5 million followers. She has a message for Jane Doe.
Thank you. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for fighting. And through her voice, she will give a voice to the voiceless.
You know, what's not going to happen, Bettina, is I'm not going to skulk around in a grey
Until now, Nicholas Bester has been able to speak knowing his victim has no power or legal right to defend herself.
Nicholas Bester, Allison Langdon from 60 Minutes. I had a few questions about the schoolgirl you sexually abused.
About the what?
The schoolgirl you sexually abused. Are you trying to rewrite history?
You're from 60
This is the first time he's ever been challenged on his version of events.
I'm not rewriting
You
history
say
at
you
all.
got involved with her,
I'm
but
not-
the truth of it is you isolated and groomed a vulnerable young girl.
No, nothing
You
at the
locked
time.
her in a closet and
Nothing at
forced
the
her
time.
to
No, you can
undress.
leave me alone.
Even today, making no apologies for his behaviour.
All you've done is portray yourself as the victim. What about the real victim, Nicholas? Any thoughts to her?
There's that word again,
You're-
victim. We'll
Well,
see
what?
who's the
And are
victim.
you not?
He's a master manipulator. It's very dangerous to give all the control to perpetrators.
Break my bones, you could break my heart, but you'll never break me.
Jane Doe is feeling empowered by the overwhelming support she's received and is confident that one day soon, her real self will be seen and heard.
What do you think it will give you, having the chance to say, this is who I am, and this is what really happened?
I think it would give me a unique chance to shed some light on the nature of these crimes, and a chance to help other people.
But I promise you this, you'll never break.
One step at a time. That's what I say when I go for a run. Just one step at a time. Don't think about the stairs. Don't think about don't think about the big hill coming up. Just do it one step at a time.
Break me.
Hello, I'm Allison Langdon. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.